The most dangerous prison has no walls, no bars, and no locks. It's built entirely inside your mind, and the person who put you there, they convinced you it was your idea. Psychological abuse leaves no bruises, but it rewires your entire brain. And here's what makes this terrifying. There's one mechanism I'll reveal later in this video that explains why victims of psychological abuse physically cannot recognize what's happening to them. The answer involves a neurological change so profound that scientists compared it to brainwashing. By the end of this video, you'll know the 12 warning signals that reveal a toxic relationship. And more importantly, you'll understand the invisible chain that keeps people trapped long after the abuse becomes obvious. Invisible chains break free. Some of you watching right now are in this situation and don't even know it yet. As psychologist Lundy Bancroft warned, the scars from mental cruelty can be as deep and long-lasting as wounds from punches or slaps. Let's begin. The invisible cage. Here's something that will unsettle you. Most people who are being psychologically abused don't know it's happening, not because they are unintelligent, but because the abuse was designed to be invisible. Psychological abuse operates below the threshold of conscious awareness. Think about physical violence for a moment. A bruise is undeniable. You see it, you feel it, other people notice it. But what about someone who slowly convinces you that your feelings are wrong, that your memories are faulty, that your perception of reality can't be trusted? Dr. Judith Herman at Harvard studied trauma for decades and found something disturbing. Psychological abuse actually causes measurable changes in brain structure. The amygdala, your brain's threat detection center, becomes hyperactivated. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thought, begins to shrink. Your brain literally rewires itself to accept the abuse as normal. This is the first signal. You start doubting your own reality. You find yourself constantly questioning whether your feelings are valid. You replay conversations wondering if maybe you really are too sensitive. Doubt reality erased. Psychologists call this gaslighting, named after a 1944 film where a husband systematically made his wife believe she was going insane. But what most people don't realize is that gaslighting follows a very specific pattern, and the next signal reveals exactly how it escalates. Reality erosion. But this next one, this is where it gets truly insidious. The second warning signal is constant invalidation, and it's far more destructive than you think. Chronic invalidation teaches your nervous system that your emotions are dangerous. Imagine this, you come home after a terrible day, you try to share how you're feeling, and the response you get is, "You're overreacting. That's not a big deal. Why are you always so dramatic?" Now imagine hearing that every single day for months, for years. What happens? You stop sharing, you stop feeling. You learn that your internal experience is fundamentally wrong. Dr. Marcia Linehan, who developed dialectical behavior therapy, identified chronic invalidation as one of the primary causes of emotional dysregulation. As she observed, an invalidating environment communicates that your responses are incorrect, faulty, or inappropriate. The victim begins to internalize a devastating belief that they cannot trust their own emotions. Silent, they become emotional ghosts, present but hollow. If this pattern is resonating deep within you right now, hit like and subscribe to keep exploring the depths of your psyche with me. Because what comes next reveals how this invalidation transforms into something even darker. Complete isolation from everyone who could help you see the truth. Cutting the ropes. If you thought invalidation was disturbing, you're not ready for this. The third and fourth warning signals work together like a 1-2 punch. Isolation from support and manufactured dependency. Isolated, dependent, trapped. The abuser doesn't lock you in a room. That would be too obvious. Instead, they do something far more sophisticated. They slowly make you believe that the people who love you are the real problem. Your mother is toxic. Your friend doesn't really care about you. I'm the only one who truly understands you. Isolation is not a side effect of abuse. It is the primary strategy. Researcher Evan Stark coined the term coercive control to describe this pattern. He found that abusers systematically dismantle their victims' support network, not through force but through subtle manipulation. They create conflicts between you and your loved ones. They sulk or rage when you spend time with others. They make you feel guilty for having a life outside the relationship. And once you're isolated, signal number 4 kicks in. Financial control. They monitor your spending. They make you ask permission for purchases. They ensure you have no independent resources. As domestic violence researcher Lundy Bancroft noted, he gains the most control when you have nowhere to turn. You become a prisoner who doesn't even realize the door is locked. And the next signal, It's the mechanism that makes escape feel genuinely impossible. Walking on glass. Let me pause here because this next part changes the entire picture. Signal number 5 is intermittent reinforcement, and neuroscientists say it's the most addictive pattern the human brain can experience. More addictive than any drug. Here's how it works. The abuser alternates unpredictably between cruelty and kindness. One day they're cold, dismissive, cruel. The next day they're loving, attentive, perfect. Your brain doesn't know what to expect, and that uncertainty, it triggers a massive dopamine response. The same neurochemical pathway activated by gambling and substance addiction. Your brain becomes chemically addicted to the cycle of pain and relief. Psychologist B.F. Skinner discovered that intermittent reinforcement creates the strongest behavioral bonds, stronger than consistent reward. The victim doesn't stay because of the good times. They stay because the good times are unpredictable, and that unpredictability hijacks the brain's reward system. Signal number 6 compounds this. Constant criticism disguised as concern. I'm only saying this because I care about you. If you weren't so lazy, you'd be so much more attractive. Love disguised poison. As Alice Miller wrote, the way we were treated as small children is the way we treat ourselves the rest of our lives. The abuser becomes your inner critic made flesh. And the truly terrifying part, the next 2 signals explain why your body physically prevents you from leaving. Trauma bonding. Now, what I'm about to tell you sounds impossible, but it's been scientifically documented in hundreds of studies. Signal number 7 is the development of a trauma bond, and signal number 8 is the complete erosion of self-worth. These 2 signals create what psychologist Martin Seligman called learned helplessness, and it's the key to understanding why people stay in toxic relationships. Helpless. In Seligman's famous experiment, dogs were exposed to inescapable shocks. Eventually, even when the cage door was opened, the dogs didn't leave. They had learned that their actions didn't matter. The victim stops believing escape is possible not because it isn't, but because their brain has been rewired. This is exactly what happens in psychological abuse. After months or years of invalidation, isolation, and intermittent reinforcement, the victim's brain undergoes a fundamental shift. The neural pathways associated with agency and self-efficacy literally weaken. The cage door is open, but the prisoner no longer sees it. And here's the devastating truth about Signal 8. The victim begins to believe they deserve the abuse. Their self-worth has been so systematically demolished that they genuinely think no one else would want them. No one can make you feel inferior without your consent, but consent can be manufactured. The abuser didn't just trap them. They convinced them that the cage is where they belong. But what comes next reveals the most sophisticated manipulation technique of all. The mask shift. Stop and think about this for a second. Every single abuser has one thing in common. They show a completely different face to the outside world. Signal number 9 is the public-private split, and signal number 10 is what psychologists call moving the goalposts. 2 faces, 1 monster. The abuser is charming at parties, generous with friends, admired by colleagues, and behind closed doors, a completely different person. This is why victims often feel like they're going crazy, because when they try to tell someone, the response is always the same, but they seem so nice. Nobody believes you because the mask is perfect. Dr. Robert Hare, who spent his career studying psychopathy, found that the most manipulative individuals are masters of impression management. They don't just hide their cruelty, they actively cultivate a public image of kindness. Signal 10 is equally devastating, moving the goalposts. The rules keep changing. What pleased them yesterday irritates them today. You can never do enough, be enough, give enough. The game is rigged so that you can never win no matter how hard you try. You spend all your energy trying to meet impossible standards that shift the moment you reach them. As Viktor Frankl observed in the most extreme conditions, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. But what if the situation was designed to make changing yourself impossible? The next signal answers that question, and it might be the hardest one to hear. Guilt weapons. Here's where the story takes a dark turn. Signal number 11 is weaponized guilt, the abuser's most powerful tool, and it works because it targets the very thing that makes you human, your empathy. The more empathetic you are, the more vulnerable you become to guilt manipulation. Think about how this sounds in real life. After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me. I guess I'm just not good enough for you. If you really loved me, you wouldn't need other people. Every time you try to set a boundary, the abuser flips the script. Suddenly you're the one causing harm, you're the selfish one, you're the abuser. Guilt, shame, control. Psychologist George Simon called this playing the victim, one of the most effective manipulation tactics because it exploits your natural compassion. The more caring and empathetic you are, the easier you are to control through guilt. 1, they turn every boundary into a betrayal. 2, they rewrite history to become the victim. 3, they use your empathy as a weapon against you. 4, they make you apologize for being hurt. This is why narcissistic abuse survivors consistently report the same experience, feeling responsible for the abuser's emotions while being unable to identify their own. The narcissist doesn't break your heart, they break your understanding of what love is. And the final signal, it's the one that reveals exactly why your brain couldn't see any of this happening. Frog in water. If you've been waiting for the most disturbing part of this video, this is it. Signal 12 is gradual normalization, and it's the reason I said earlier that victims physically cannot recognize what's happening to them. Remember that open loop from the beginning? Here's the answer. Normalization. The abuse never starts at full intensity. It begins with something so small you barely notice it. A comment about your appearance. A subtle put-down disguised as a joke. A small request that seems reasonable. Then it escalates, so slowly that your brain adjusts at every stage. Each new violation becomes the new normal before the next one arrives. Neuroscientist Dr. Bruce Perry explains that the human brain is designed to adapt to its environment, including abusive ones. Your baseline for what's normal literally shifts. What would have horrified you 6 months ago now seems acceptable. Your brain has been slowly reprogrammed to accept the unacceptable. This is the boiling frog principle applied to human psychology. The temperature rises so gradually that by the time you realize you're being burned, you've already lost the ability to jump out. This is why psychological abuse is often more destructive than physical violence. As psychiatrist Bessel van der Kolk documented, the body keeps the score. What the mind forgets, the body remembers. The abuse leaves no visible marks, but it rewires your entire nervous system. Do you think this gradual normalization is the most dangerous aspect of psychological abuse, or is it the learned helplessness? Comment normalization or helplessness below. Breaking free. Now forget everything society told you about leaving toxic relationships. Just leave is the most useless advice you can give someone who's been psychologically abused, and here's the science that proves why. Breaking the invisible chains. Remember what we discussed about learned helplessness, trauma bonding, and brain rewiring. Leaving isn't just an emotional challenge, it's a neurological one. The brain has literally been restructured to maintain the bond. But here's the hope. Neuroplasticity works both ways. The same brain that was rewired by abuse can be rewired by healing. Dr. Judith Herman identified 3 stages of trauma recovery that have been validated across decades of research. 1. Safety. Establishing physical and emotional security. 2. Remembrance, processing the trauma without being overwhelmed. 3. Reconnection, rebuilding relationships and identity. The first step isn't leaving, the first step is recognizing, and if you've watched this far, you've already begun that process. The recognition itself begins to reverse the brain changes caused by abuse. When you name what's happening, you activate the prefrontal cortex, the very region the abuse suppressed. Awareness is the first crack in the invisible cage. Seek professional help, reconnect with people the abuser separated you from, and understand this. The shame you feel, it was planted there. It doesn't belong to you, as Carl Jung taught us. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And that brings us to the most important truth of all. Reclaim yourself. Here's the truth that changes everything. Psychological abuse doesn't just damage you, it hides the damage from you. That's what makes it the most sophisticated form of control ever devised. It rewires your brain to defend the very person who's destroying you. You were never broken, you were systematically dismantled by someone who needed you small. But here's what your abuser never wanted you to discover. The person you were before the abuse still exists. Every quality they tried to suppress, every boundary they demolished, every piece of your identity they eroded. It's all still there, waiting beneath the programming. Reclaim your true self. The 12 signals we covered today are not just warning signs, they're a map of exactly how the cage was built. And when you understand the architecture of the prison, you hold the blueprint for escape. Recognize the gaslighting, name the invalidation, see the isolation for what it is. Understand that the addiction isn't love, it's intermittent reinforcement. Know that the guilt isn't yours, it was implanted. The program is breaking, and you can see the code now. As the great psychoanalyst Alice Miller wrote, the truth about our childhood is stored up in our body, and although we can repress it, we can never alter it. Your truth is still in there. Go find it. Send this to someone who might be in a toxic relationship right now. Sometimes the people who need this most are the ones who can't see it themselves. Today we map the 12 warning signals of psychological abuse. From gaslighting and invalidation, through isolation and financial control, to intermittent reinforcement, constant criticism, trauma bonding, erosion of self-worth, the public-private split, moving goalposts, weaponized guilt, and the most dangerous of all, gradual normalization. Psychological abuse leaves no bruises, but it rewires the brain itself. And now you understand why. The abuse doesn't just hurt you, it changes the very organ you use to recognize danger. It turns your own mind against you. But knowledge is the antidote. Every signal you can now name is a signal that loses its power over you. If you made it this far, comment cage broken if you're ready to reclaim your psyche. Cage broken, free mind. Welcome to the Psyche Project. If this gave you something to think about, subscribe for more. Share this with someone who needs to hear it.